as those different services modernize, not only is the experience going to be enhanced for the state employees who have to work with that system, we're going to be doing a great service to the public by making sure that the public experience for those who use those services in that public facing way, that's going to be greatly enhanced, because ultimately that's why you have government, right? We're here to sort of serve the public, especially at the state and local level.
From Tyler Technologies, it's the Tyler Tech Podcast, your source for insightful conversations with thought leaders addressing the pressing issues in our communities. I'm Josh Henderson, and I'm on the corporate marketing team here at Tyler. Thanks for joining us. In each episode, we dive into the essential topics shaping our society and shed light on the individuals, places, and technologies empowering the public sector. If you like what you hear, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review, subscribing on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and recommending the show to others. On today's episode, Tyler's Director of State Data Solutions, Elliot Flautt, sits down with Nevada State Controller Andy Matthews to explore his remarkable journey in public service and his commitment to government transparency. Andy shares insights from his early career in political campaigns and his pivotal role at the Nevada Policy Research Institute, a think tank organization that championed limited government and free market-oriented solutions to public policy, and discover how that led him to run for office, ultimately serving in the Nevada State Assembly and now as the state controller. Andy highlights his successful campaign to promote accountability and transparency in state spending, and tells Elliot all about the Nevada Open Finance Portal, a groundbreaking initiative launched in partnership with Tyler, providing taxpayers with unprecedented access to detailed information on government expenditures. Andy also discusses the importance of leveraging modern technology such as cloud-based solutions to enhance state financial systems. He offers valuable insights into the practical steps and strategic decision-making involved in selecting and implementing these technologies, promoting a forward-thinking approach to state governance. This is a wonderful chat between Elliot and Andy, so without further ado, let's get to their conversation. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Thanks for joining me, Andy. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Elliot. It's good to be here with you.
Likewise. Well, let's go ahead and get things kicked off. I know that you've had a super interesting career up until this point, and I'm kind of curious if you could tell our listeners a little bit about your background and your journey to becoming where you currently sit in the state of Nevada. And let's start there.
Sure. When I was younger, in my 20s, I worked on political campaigns for a couple of years, but my interest was always really more in the public policy aspect of things. And for about 8 years, I worked at an organization called the Nevada Policy Research Institute, which is of course, Nevada-based free market think tank that promotes sort of limited government, free market oriented solutions to public policy challenges. And I served as president of that group for the last 4 years there. This would have been from about 2011 to 2015. And it was a great experience, really enjoyed it. We worked a lot on fiscal issues and did some stuff with education policy, government transparency, which we'll come back to, was a big part of our mission. And over time, the idea behind the organization was that, you put out these policy recommendations, and then hopefully policymakers take those ideas and put them into practice. Of course, that's the idea. That isn't always how it ends up playing out. And I was sort of growing frustrated over time that I really didn't see sort of the impact that, despite the great work that the organization was doing, I really felt like we needed a change in the direction of what was going on in terms of what we were getting from our elected officials. And I finally came to the conclusion, hey, if we're going to change policies, maybe we got to change policy makers. I ran unsuccessfully actually for the U.S. Congress in 2016, but ended up coming back and running in 2020 for the Nevada State Assembly. And I got elected and served for one term in the state assembly. I ran for state controller in 2022 and ended up winning that race. And I really ran on a platform of vote for me, elect me, and I'm going to make it my top priority to promote government transparency, post all spending online for taxpayers to see. I know we'll get into some of the details on that, but that was sort of the core message of my campaign. Got elected in 2022 and been really thrilled to be able to deliver on a lot of that.
Yeah, super interesting background. You kind of just took the bull by the horns and said, well, I think I can do it better. So that's where you are.
It's interesting, some of my colleagues, former colleagues in the legislature who, were the ones that, you know, I guess were those who could have helped me move a lot of those ideas forward when I was in the assembly and chose not to. And now we're sort of doing it. And I still have good relationships with them, but it's kind of funny to sort of see that the fact that we've had a chance to do it through sort of the executive branch, which has been exciting. But, politics is always an interesting line of work, and sometimes you get into some of the back and forth and the combativeness there. But I'm just honored and blessed to be able to serve our state in this capacity and to be able to, I think, really move the ball forward on some issues that aren't partisan at all. I think government transparency is an issue that I think people of all different political stripes and perspectives can agree on, and I think that's been borne out in the response to a lot of the stuff we've done.
Yeah. I mean, you were in the state assembly. Now you're in the office of the controller. I guess kind of just a baseline question for folks listening. Like in Nevada, what does a controller do?
Yeah, the joke always that I hear at different conferences I go to is if you've seen one state financial office, you've seen one state financial office, because they're very different, right? So there's different wherever you go. Number one question, Elliot, that I got when I was campaigning, for this office is, what does the state controller do? What exactly are you in control of, right? So sort of broad strokes, the controller serves as the chief fiscal officer for the state. We manage the accounting system. We sign the checks. We process transactions on the state's behalf. We do a number of other things. Vendor services is one thing that's in our domain. We're involved in debt collection and a few other things. But like I said, one of the things that I think brought to the table that's a little bit unique to me, and as we've already discussed, dovetails with my background, is really bringing more transparency to government spending and letting the public see more of what's going on. So one thing that's interesting in Nevada, and again, this is different state to state, but we have an elected treasurer and an elected controller, two different offices. I think that's important because it goes to sort of checks and balances. You've got the two money offices in the hands of two different people. And I think that's something that serves our state well. So it's one of the lower profile statewide offices. We have 6 statewide executive branch elected offices. Some everybody knows, governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general. Controller is one of the lower profile ones, but I think it's a really critical function that we perform.
Yeah. And I know that you had kind of mentioned that you ran on at least a partial platform of transparency for folks in the state. But could you explain a little bit more around why you feel that transparency is important, why it's important for the work that government folks do, and why it's important for Nevadans?
Yeah, so a number of reasons. The most obvious one is when we're talking about government spending, we're talking about taxpayer money, and my response, and I get asked this a lot by citizens around the state, why was this so important to you? And I say, it's real simple. It's your money. It's your money. You deserve to know how and where your government is spending it, and I think that's really important. We can disagree all day or have the debate all day on the issue of bigger government, smaller government, et cetera. We should all be able to agree on the importance of transparent and open and accountable government. But beyond that, Elliot, I think it does provide a good practical public service. Every 2 years, Nevada's legislature meets every other year. And that's when a lot of the media attention really focuses in on what's going on with our state government. And you have these debates, between the parties or between the governor and the legislature on what we need to do fiscally, right? Do we need to spend more money, spend less money? Do we need to raise taxes? Do we need to not raise or perhaps even reduce taxes? And if you're a typical citizen, if you're a layman who isn't an expert on what's going on with state government, you're hearing all this, and it's easy to get kind of lost in that conversation if you don't know what's already going on. If you don't really have access already to good quality, accurate, detailed information on what the state is doing with the money it already has, you're going to be left with a lot of guesswork, I think, on, well, who's telling the truth? Who's right? Are we spending enough money? Do we need to spend more? if you don't really know what's already happening, it's hard to form an educated opinion on that. And so I think putting this information out there for people to see uh, helps to shed some light on that discussion, helps people to be a little bit more in the loop on what's happening. And I think it's empowering for our citizenry. They're going to know more. They're going to be more involved, more informed, and then as a result, more involved, more engaged. Because if they feel like they've got access to good quality information, they're going to feel like there's a purpose and some kind of utility to them getting involved, because they're not going to just be flying blind on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, and kind of like you were saying, access to the information is really just table stakes for any kind of reasoned discussion we want to have, and ultimately figuring out like how everybody can kind of, dare I say it, democratize access to it, or at least make it transparently available online, or however you're going to do that.
And it's going to be beneficial, I think, to those who serve in government as well, because I think public trust in our institutions is going to go up. In a lot of cases, it's going to make people's lives easier. All of this information that we have put out. We'll talk about a little bit about the actual project that we launched, in working with Tyler Technologies. But all the information that's out there, this is information that belongs to the public anyway. It's all subject to public records requests. And absent the state being proactive in providing that information, what ends up happening is those in state government who work in various agencies have to be reactive when a public records request comes in. And you're constantly having to deal with that and provide that information, because under the law you have to, as you should. But I would always say, think of the busy work. I'll call it busy work because that makes it sound like it's superfluous. But think of kind of a lot of the tedious work you've got to do in complying with these requests that you can eliminate if you've got the information out there proactively. I had a reporter tell me, when we launched our online checkbook project, Andy, this is going to cut down on 75% of the public records requests that we have to file. And it's common sense. When I was running that organization, the Nevada Policy Research Institute, we had a website that provided all kinds of information on government spending, but we had to get that information through public records requests to state agencies. And I would always just say, man, why doesn't the state just do this on its own, right? They've got the information already. They ought to just do this without having to be asked. So I've been really thrilled to be able to be a part of that effort to make that happen.
Yeah, and what y'all have been able to pull together, at least thus far, has been really, really great to be a part of, and to kind of watch it grow and flourish as what I think is probably most interesting. The public as well as folks in government are using it day in, day out to get access to the information you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you want, I can get a little bit into what we did and what that project was that we worked with Tyler Technologies on, or if you want to save that. But it's just, all in all, it's been a great experience for us.
Yeah, no, I'd love to kind of get into it and kind of understand from your perspective, like what was the need? Maybe what were some of the decision criteria that you made in like selecting whether it was a provider who was in the cloud or something like that? I would really love to get your perspective there.
Yeah. So first of all, what we really wanted to do is we decided we wanted to create a website that was going to provide information on state government spending for people to see. And so we started thinking, well, what's that going to look like? What do we want that to have? And certainly we wanted to have information on the state budget, and we wanted things like the state checkbook, which we were able to do down to the actual transaction level, which was great. Information on payroll, pension disbursements, all of that. And this was sort of our vision for it. So what we wanted to do was find a vendor, someone who could work with the state to design this. And we knew that Tyler Technologies was a company that had already had some successes in this space. We knew that this was an area where there was a demonstrated ability to do it. And so we looked into that and decided it was going to be a really, really good match. And of course, you always want to go into something like this knowing that your partner in this is going to be able to do it, right? So there were sort of two parts to it. We wanted to make sure that this was going to be really user friendly, something that we could put out there where the information that we provided was going to be accessible to the state's taxpayers, the people who are going to be using it, and also make sure that we were working with a partner that had demonstrated the ability to do it well. And so we launched the website. This went out back in February of 2024, so just about 5-6 months ago now, and we call it the Nevada Open Finance Portal. It's located online at checkbook.nv.gov. And again, this is a website that people can go to find out all kinds of information on what the state is doing with their tax dollars. And it's all about getting the right vision and then aligning it with the right solution, the right technology, the right software. And of course, you mentioned the importance of the cloud and sort of leveraging those modernizations and technology, which opens up possibilities that weren't previously there. And I think that's important. Everything you do, I think, in a space like this, you want to make sure that because things change and move so quickly, you do want to make sure that you're remaining as much as you can on the cutting edge, because to come back and update something later, as we've seen with the state's ongoing ERP, sometimes those things in government especially can take a long time. So you want to make sure you're at the forefront as much as you can be.
Yeah, the more you can invest time now to make the right decision, so you're not going to have to either kick yourself or somebody else who sits in a seat later on is going to be like, what were they thinking over there?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Well said. Well said. And one last thing I will mention is, I kind of alluded to the ERP. This project, the Open Checkbook, or the Nevada Open Finance Portal, we were able to do this because it actually fit within the scope of an ongoing ERP that the state actually began probably 6-7 years ago now, to basically upgrade and modernize its financial and HR systems. So this was something that the state was already sort of embarking upon. As the state controller, I'm one of the members of the executive steering committee for that overall project. And so we were able to do this online checkbook as part of that, because it fit within the scope of that already existing project. So for us, it was also a matter of recognizing an opportunity, that what may not have been obvious, but really deciding, hey, this is something we want to do. Where might there be an opportunity to do it, so we're not starting from square one and not reinventing the wheel, so to speak? And we were really excited to find out that we could actually do this as part of something that the state was already committed to. So that was a great opportunity, but of course we had to recognize it and capitalize on it.
Yeah, essentially you're able to kind of know you're going to get there eventually, but realizing that, we can run these things in tandem takes a little bit of
Stay tuned.
know-how there.
We'll be right back with more of the Tyler Tech Podcast. I hope you're enjoying listening to this episode of the Tyler Tech Podcast. I'm here with my colleague Jay Champion to talk about the importance of tech modernization. Are you struggling to maintain your legacy systems? It might be time for a change.
That's right, Josh. We just released a white paper that outlines the 5 main risks of legacy systems and the benefits of modernizing your digital infrastructure.
From security weaknesses to inefficiencies and high maintenance costs, legacy systems can really hold back government agencies. So what are some of the benefits of future-proofing with an updated tech stack?
Modern cloud-based solutions help to streamline processes, protect against cyber threats, improve the resident experience, meet compliance requirements, and provide more scalability.
Are you ready to leave your legacy systems behind and improve your digital services? Check out our show notes for resources to help you get started, and reach out to us at podcast@tylertech.com to connect with a Tyler expert today. Now, let's get back to the Tyler Tech Podcast.
You mentioned some of the kind of decision factors you were talking about in why you decided to procure a cloud-based technology, but what would you say are some other kind of practical steps that you've adopted in selecting cloud technologies as you're going to deploy those within Nevada?
Yeah, well, we, when the ERP project first got off the ground, years ago, we wanted to make sure that we were doing this right, and so the state actually did lean on some outside consultants to sort of assess what our in-state capabilities were going to be, help us sort of chart the right course that we needed to be on for an implementation like this, making sure that we knew who the various stakeholders were going to be and who was going to have some skin in the game on this, and making sure that we had the right, HR capabilities to be able to do all of this. And so, I think that's critical, and it's something that may be easy to overlook. But anytime you're starting on a project like this, you really do want to come at it from kind of a holistic perspective, and make sure that you really go into it with a plan and with a real understanding of what your state's needs are, but also what your state's current capabilities are, and really sort of doing an in-depth, thorough evaluation of what your resources are, knowing what you need to do, what you can bring to the table already, but where you may be lacking as a state in terms of resources. That's something that was obviously critical in terms of the overall, like I said, modernization that we're doing of the state's financial and HR services. But that certainly guided us with the open checkbook as well. What is the state already doing, and what are some of the practices that we're already implementing or using or relying upon that can be adopted for what we're going to do in sort of this new territory. But where are the areas where we may be lacking? Where do you have to bring in outside help? Where we have to sort of make our own modernizations before we're ready to walk down a road like this? So I think really going in clear-eyed as to where you stand and what your strengths and weaknesses are before you get too far down the road in a project like this, and realize that maybe we're coming at this wrong, maybe we bit off more than we can chew. So I think doing that sort of self-evaluation is critical, and you bringing whatever resources you need to bring to bear on that is something that I think we were very diligent about, and certainly we continue to do. We advise anybody to do that if you're thinking of going down a road like this.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's always, at least in many circles that I've talked in, there's always a desire to kind of move fast and experiment with something. But with some of these larger implementations, like you're talking about, especially with the ERP at a state level, understanding where you are and where you're going to go is going to be crucial, because I think that like any big ERP project, it's going to be years long, and you have to be able to know where you are in terms of the milestones you set, so that you're not just kind of sitting there 3 years later being like, what are we doing?
Yep. And you need to be, there's a lot that, that's exactly right. And you need to also know, I would say there's sort of two mindsets that they may sound like they're in friction, but they're really not, I don't think. I mean, you've got to have the vision of knowing where you need to go, and starting out by really, like I said, being thorough in terms of, choosing the right product, choosing the right partner, the right vendor, and knowing what it is you need to accomplish, and setting out those milestones. At the same time, you also need to be aware that there are going to be things that will pop up that were unforeseen, right? I mean, none of us are perfect. None of us are all knowing and can anticipate every need that may arise, or every challenge that the state may encounter. And so you've got to sort of have the right balance of having a plan and being willing to stick with it and be faithful to it, but also understand at the same time you've got to have at least a little bit of flexibility, where you're not too doggedly or too rigidly committed to something, where if circumstances change, you're not willing to adjust where it's necessary, right? And that's hard. That's a hard thing to do sometimes, because like I said, they kind of seem like they're in friction. And on the one hand, you can be tempted to say, well, this is the way we decided we were going to do it, and we got to stick with that. But sometimes that does become untenable. As a member of the executive steering committee for this, and the other, it's a 3-person committee, and the other 2 are appointees of the governor, the head of the Department of Administration and the head of the governor's Office of Finance. I think the 3 of us work well together, and we meet regularly, and we talk regularly. And I think that's absolutely critical, because I think that's how you're going to be able to identify where are those areas where you may be vulnerable that you didn't realize you were before. And, where's an area where you may need to kind of call an audible, to use a football term. And we thought we were going to do it this way, and maybe we're not going to. And if you have a leadership team that's kind of hands off and just isn't engaged in the project, you can run the risk of being kind of blind to some of the risks and the challenges that might arise in the course of the project's implementation where a change of course really is called for. So it's that, and it's not easy. You've got to try to find that balance of being committed to your plan, but flexible enough, and where you adjust when you need to, but also hopefully having that wisdom and the humility to be able to say, the wisdom to be able to say, okay, are we good on our current course, or do we have to change gears? And the humility to say, maybe I don't know the answer to that, and maybe I've got to lean on some others involved in the project and start asking some questions before I can come to those answers.
Yeah, there's I think it's a Thomas Edison quote that I really like, saying it, at least in moments like that, like, I haven't failed. I've just found 1,000 ways that haven't worked yet.
Yeah. The one I always think, there's another one too. It's I forget who said it, but it's I never fail. I either succeed or I learn, or something
Yeah.
like that. It's same thing, right? Same general point. So
Yeah.
look, with something like this, it's a massive undertaking. There's a lot on the line. And you got to take it very, very seriously. So I know a lot of states are in a similar situation. I think, when I go to talk to some of my colleagues around the country, and I see them a couple times a year at conferences, I know a lot of states are in a similar boat, and they're trying to modernize their own systems. And I know it's a heavy lift, and I'm very, obviously very sensitive to that. But we've got a good team working on it here in Nevada. There's always bumps in the road. We've hit ours. Like I said, I've been in office now for about a year and a half. This project started, about 6 years ago. So, and the original plan, I think, was that it was going to be implemented by now, and obviously it isn't. And so that tells you right there that things didn't go exactly according to plan. But that's okay. Sometimes you reset. You learn from what may have happened before that wasn't quite ideal, and you try to do your best going forward. I'm confident in where we are now. I think we've got a good team. And I think it's going to end up being a great product, a great result, a great road forward for our state.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing the results of that. I know that like you said, you've got a great team doing it. This isn't really like the purview of the conversation, but I'm curious about something that you just said around the executive steering committee, and you used the word humility in leadership, and that's not something that I hear often. That people are actually concerned about when making decisions. Do you have any examples of where that's kind of come through? I'm just kind of curious, like, why that word? Because it's kind of interesting.
As an elected official, right, as someone who campaigns and someone who's in the political realm, it's easy, it's tempting to, and you see this with a lot of people who are in public life, to think that because you've obtained some certain level of success in that particular arena, or large numbers of people have voted for you, to say, well, I really must be something else here. But I think the best thing that anyone can bring to any position, but probably especially in public life, is a sense of humility, by which I mean just being able to say, look, I don't have all the answers. I've got principles, and I've got ideas, and I've got things that I know I'm able to do well and able to bring to my position and bring to the state, and a level of public service I'm able to provide. But none of us are all knowing, right? And even if you're part of a leadership team on a project, that doesn't mean you're going to have all the answers on that project. And I think this is true anywhere, whether it's the basketball coach that pulls his assistant coach aside and says, what play do you think we ought to run coming out of this next timeout, or a general, out in the field of battle who, goes to some of his or her subordinates and says, what do you think we ought to do here? I lean on our staff, on my team. I've got a great, smart, hardworking chief deputy. His name is James Smack. He actually served in the controller's office under my predecessor's predecessor, has a lot of institutional knowledge, knows a lot about what goes on in this office, and has some experience with this particular project. And so for me, if we're in a meeting of the executive leadership team, and there's a decision we need to make, and it's on the table, I think humility means sometimes saying, you know what, I know the question that's in front of us. I know we need to make a decision on this, but I feel like I need to educate myself a little bit more. I don't feel like I've got in my own brain at this moment, all of the information that I need to make the best decision I can. And, rather than faking it, because you don't want to look like you're not as knowledgeable as you should be, being able to say, I want to ask some questions of some others, either in my office or elsewhere, who may know more about this particular topic, this particular question we're dealing with than I do, and not being afraid to say that, and then you go to, your number two in your office, or someone else in the office who may have some particular technical expertise, related to the particular question that you're considering. The worst thing you can do, I think, is to sort of allow a sense of hubris or self assuredness, overconfidence, or even just pride to say, well, I got to feel like I've got all the answers. I'm just going to make this decision. Sometimes that's fine if you're confident, that you've got the right answer. But being able to say, look, we got a lot of smart people around me in a lot of ways, many ways, a lot smarter than I am. And being able to say, I'm going to pick that person's brain or this person's brain so I can make sure I make the best decision possible. I think we need more of that in government to begin with. But that's a mindset that I've really tried to bring with me to this project, is say, don't feel like you got to make all these decisions on your own. Take advantage of the wealth of information that's and the knowledge of the people who are around you. And I think that's helped us. That's really served me well, I think, in this particular leadership role in this project.
Well, thank you for diving down that rabbit hole with me. It's kind of fascinating always to hear.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked. Yeah.
Well, bringing us back kind of towards, I would say, the present as it relates to technology and more of kind of the future. What are some of the opportunities you see for the Controller's Office in Nevada going forward to build on some of the newer technologies that you're investing in?
Yeah, I think one of the things, just to kind of go back to where we started on the open checkbook, I think that what we've been able to do has been a great service for the state. But my purview as the state controller is limited to state spending. And one of the things I'm really looking at is trying to figure out how to get some of our local governments to kind of follow suit and do their own transparency projects the way that we have. A lot of the power in Nevada's government is actually vested in local government. Our counties in particular have a lot of power. A lot of the money in our state is actually spent at the county level. And so I think if you're a citizen, you're saying, well, this is great that we've got information on state spending there, but I'd really like to see what's going on with my county or my city or my school district. What's happening with spending there. And a lot of these local governments may not have the knowledge, especially some of our smaller counties here in Nevada. They may not really know how to do this. They may not even know that it's possible to do this. And a lot of them may not have the resources to be able to embark on a project like what we've done with the open checkbook. So one of the things that I've been looking at, Elliot, is, well, how can we at the state level, without getting involved in dictating, because we certainly can't do that, but wouldn't want to do that. I have no desire to start going into local governments and saying, this is what you guys need to do. But what I see an opportunity to do is to go to some of them and say, hey, look, we've done this at the state level. It's been hugely beneficial. The public response has been great. The response from the press has been really good too. We want to help you. We want to facilitate you and your efforts, if you're interested in doing this, to provide this same service at the local level. And I think that's an area that I'm excited about looking forward. Is, it's much easier for a state, with the resources we have, to do something like this. For a lot of our local governments, it may be harder because they may just be not as up to speed as the state is in terms of technological capabilities right now. But doing what we can to help them kind of bridge that gap, figure out where they can go to get those resources. I think that's an area, when I look sort of to the next couple of years down the road, that I think we can really expand on some of the successes that we've had. And there's a lot more that can be done. But I think the last thing I would say on that is as we look at what the state does going forward, and I'll bring this back to what's going on with the ERP and the modernization that we're doing, which is going to be great, of course, for um, state employees, the ones that use the system. But we also need to keep in mind sort of the outward facing facets of this, right? Those that have sort of a public interfacing. So you've got the internal financial and HR systems, which is what state employees certainly use. But then you've got public facing services like to the DMV or different social services or unemployment, things like that, where members of the public are using those systems. And so as those different services modernize, not only is the experience going to be enhanced for the state employees that have to work with that system, but you're going to be doing a great service to the public by making sure that the public experience for those who use those services in that public facing way, that's going to be greatly enhanced, because ultimately that's why you have government, right? We're here to sort of serve the public, especially at the state and local level, is to provide some of those key services. And so as we modernize, keeping in mind that yes, we want to make sure that all of this better serves the state employees who use these services and use these systems, to make sure that members of the public who fund all of these, after all, are going to be better served. And I think keeping an eye on that and making sure that that's really front of mind as we do all of this is going to be something that's really critical.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm excited to see what transparency looks like in Nevada in the next few years. I mean, I think providing not just a state view, but county views is going to be really interesting to help engage with different localities and jurisdictions across the state.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, before we close, is there any advice or tidbits you'd like to give to anybody who's embarking on a digital services project or a technology modernization project?
Yeah, I think we sort of touched on this before, but I think the two critical components is know yourself, and then know your partner, who it is you're working with. Really make sure that you are serious about assessing where you are today as a state, what your needs are, what your needs are going to be, where your shortcomings may be, and just really conducting a thorough self-critical analysis of where you are as a state, and as best you can try to anticipate different challenges that may come up in the course of something. And then on the other side to that is making sure that as you consider what service provider are you going to work with, what vendor are you going to use, just making sure that you ask all the right questions, and you're really thorough again about making sure that it's going to be the right fit for your state, and what other projects have they worked on. Like I said, one of the reasons that Tyler Technologies was such a great fit for us, so we were confident about that with the online checkbook, because we knew that there was a track record there, and a very good one, which gave us a lot of confidence going in. So knowing what your needs are and really making sure that you are honest about, or very diligent about making sure that you find the partner in that project that's going to be the right fit for you. You do that, that's not a guarantee that everything's going to be smooth sailing, but I think those are two of the biggest pieces to it. And if you get that right and really take the time to get it right, I think you're going to put yourself in a great position to succeed.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that serves as some good advice for folks considering these projects, and that we can all learn from experiences like that.
Absolutely. That's my hope.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for your time, Andy. Looking forward to chatting soon at some point. But with that, I think we're out.
All right. Thanks so much. It was my pleasure.
And that's all for today's episode. We hope you enjoyed this conversation between Elliot Flautt and Andy Matthews. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed throughout the episode, check out our show notes for more resources. A modern digital infrastructure allows the public sector to adapt in the digital age. From operational agility to data management and analytics, as well as cost savings, security, compliance, and scalability, governments are poised to take advantage of innovative technology to create more efficiencies in their systems and better support and connect their communities. Tyler creates solutions made exclusively for the public sector and has experts with government experience ready to support you on this journey. I hope you're excited about what the future holds and will reach out to us at podcast@tylertech.com to connect with a subject matter expert if you'd like to learn more. And whether it's state finance solutions or a modern digital infrastructure or something else entirely, we want to hear from you about what you'd enjoy hearing more of and how we can make the Tyler Tech podcast even better. Fill out our audience survey in the show notes today to let us know how you heard about the show and your ideas for future episodes. And don't forget to subscribe to the show and rate and review the podcast. For Tyler Technologies, I'm Josh Henderson. Thanks for joining the Tyler Tech podcast.